Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I've got lots of slides today, so I'm going to have to rattle through them a bit, but I'll be on the HDB stand during the course of the morning and be very happy to talk to any of you about issues that the talk might raise. I work at Rothamsted. These are some pictures of the place in Hertfordshire, Harpenden, and our founder there, Sir John Laws, on the bottom right. Now, Laws made his fortune from phosphate fertilizer, and he spotted a gap in the market after the invention of this item in the middle, the water closet. Before that, what used to happen was that people would go into cities like London and collect what was politely called night soil at the top there, a bit whiffy, take it out to people like yourselves and spread it on the field, transferring the fertility. So Laws invented or discovered a process to create mineral phosphate fertilizer, which is what he made his fortune from. And it's rather humbling to realize that I owe my career to the invention of the toilet. Be that as it may, these are some of the experiments that Laws set up, broadball wheat experiment in 1843, in order to try and understand the science behind fertility. And one of the things that organic matter does, if you get it in your soil, is it confers stability. These two different soils, and this video is happening in real time, come from soils on the left with relatively more organic carbon, and on the right half as much. And as you can see, in about 15-20 seconds, the aggregate on the right, which did not have any organic matter, well, it had half the organic matter in it that the grassland soil had, fell completely apart. And this is a bit of a drastic comparison. The soil on the right has not had any crops growing on it for 60 years. We do some strange things like that in our field experiments, but you can see the benefits of keeping organic matter in your soils. So what I want to talk to today, or get you interested in, is what does organic matter do and how does it do it, and how much do you need and when? So to consider another experiment which we run, which has grown barley every year since 1852, I think. At least that's the top and the bottom, the green and the blue lines in this diagram. And what I've plotted out here is the response curve, how much yield you get for the amount of nitrogen that's applied. And you can see that the upper line, that green one, which has had farmyard manure all that time, is yielding a lot more. There's a treatment down there in the middle, this red one, which is one we started relatively recently at the turn of the century. And within 10 years or so, it had moved up a long way. It was nearly yielding as much as the old organic matter treatment. So that had us wondering a bit. But what I want to illustrate to you is the fact that this additional yield that you seem to get is really additional. It's not just coming from extra nitrogen which the manure is applying. Because if I move that curve across, you'll see that I've moved it horizontally. That's it, I'm shifting the amount of nitrogen which the experiment is getting, but you're still getting this additional response. So there's something more that organic matter does than provide nutrients. One of the other interesting things that it does, if I look at the same experiment over the same period of time, is you get ups and downs. As you've just heard, the weather is particularly fickle in this country. I can't do much about solar radiation, but we think that organic matter helps soil to retain water and therefore provide water and help roots explore the soil better for other nutrients such as phosphorus. Now, in the years when this line at the bottom, which is not getting any manure, it's only getting mineral fertilizer, in the years when that does badly, the plots which are getting farmyard manure as well as ordinary nitrogen, that is, their organic matter levels are building up, do relatively better. And if I plot that out in a line like this, what I've illustrated along the bottom is yield without organic matter, and on the the left-hand axis going up, this is this difference, the benefit you get from applying organic matter as well as mineral N. You can see that when you're getting particularly bad years, the organic matter helps you retain yield. You do relatively less badly. We started asking ourselves what this might be, what the reasons for this might be. And this is another series of experiments where we've got soils with less in blue, or rather more organic matter. And we've mixed the soils up on the left-hand side of this vertical line. These soils have been, they've been taken from the field and they've been grown in pots, and we've seen what the yields might be. But in all these cases, the three cases on the left-hand side, what's happening is that the plant roots don't seem to be able to find the phosphorus, so more phosphorus is needed. You take the soils out and mix them so that you remove any advantages of structure which the organic matter rich soils might have, then the yields are relatively the same in terms of the amount of phosphorus that the roots can find. And in particular, you'll notice that the amount of phosphorus which is needed in order to attain maximum yields has come down. So there's something to do with the roots being able to explore the soil structure in order to find the nutrients. And we went out with one of these penetrometer needles to try and measure how much compaction or resistance to roots what there was in the soil. And sure enough, in the soils where there's very little farmyard manure being applied, so there's relatively little organic matter in there, it takes a lot more force to push this needle into the ground. And that's a surrogate really for what roots must be trying to do in order to find nutrients and water. And we think that these guys, among others, are what's responsible. Earthworms, but not just earthworms, all the biology in the soil. What that organic matter is doing is it's feeding the biological organisms that live in soil. They're helping to rearrange the structure to some extent so that the plant roots are able to move around, find water and find nutrients, and so grow better. And with AHDB's help, we set up a series of trials to look at different rates of organic matter and different kinds of organic matter to see what might help improve yields, not just farmyard manure, and on a range of crops. And we have additional money now, along with NIAB in Cambridge, to be looking at the effect and benefits of cover cropping too. So our chairman, I hope, will be pleased about that. I'll be reporting on this soon, but essentially to take the average results over 4 years, I've got a blue line there showing the response to different rates of nitrogen against the relative yield of various crops. The blue line is the one that does not get organic matter, and you can see that the others are all yielding considerably more, up to about a ton or so of yield in each year. And that doesn't just apply to the grain yield of these combinable crops that we've been working on. Straw yields are up as well. And if you're selling that on for energy or for bedding or for whatever, you ought to be able to get a better price for that too. We went out in this series of AHDB-funded experiments and we measured the earthworms. And I've plotted out there the number, the amount, the weight of the earthworms that we found in the treatments, either without compost or manure, or with it. And in all cases, there was a significant increase in the biomass of earthworms, and therefore the activity of the biology that's going on. Now, I'm probably running severely out of time now, but one thing that we did do was go out and try and develop an instrument which would be able to sense differences in structure within the field. And that's this device which is fitted on the back of the tractor here. It's a bit of a toy plough, I'm afraid. It's only got 3 furrows, not the sort of things that you would be using. But the instrument itself is not very strong. It's a bit fragile. And in fact, we've had a bit of problems with it this year. But it was able to go out and measure the draft forces which we found within the field, and we were able to attribute them to some extent to the amount of carbon which is found in the field. This is a map from our Broadbelt field experiment where we've got strips which receive farmyard manure on the right-hand side. They're that browner colour, and the lighter colour is where there's less carbon in the soil. And this is a contour map showing the clay contents, which also varies. So this instrument, of course, senses all the forces which are needed to pull it through the soil, and water and clay and organic matter, all of them have an effect on the draft forces. But this map was one we produced on the specific draft as you pull the plough through the soil, and it ranges really from quite a low number of about 50 or 60 right up to about 130 or 140. Now those are quite large differences. What does that mean, you might ask yourselves? Well, it means fuel, basically. If that's a low number and you double it, you're going to need proportionately twice as much fuel to be able to pull the tractor or turn the soil over with a plough. So organic matter not only confers yield or improvements on yields, but I would argue that it also saves you money in the amount of fuel that you will use in order to plough the field. I'll skip over that because just very briefly I was asked to say a little bit about measuring soil organic matter, which is not particularly my area, but what I want to draw your attention to is the fact that you will be taking soil samples from something that looks a little bit like this, one of our fields at Rothamsted, relatively small perhaps to some of the ones that you plough, but you'll be taking from soil from there, and you will be putting it, or your analyst will be putting it in a little boat like that, which is probably the size of a thumb. You have got to be able to get something representative out of the field into that boat that goes into a furnace and measures the loss of the weight that is carbon. You're taking something on the scale of meters, perhaps even kilometers and tons, and going down to grams and a few centimeters. You have to make sure that the samples you take, or the samples that your analyst takes, are representative. One of the classical ways of doing this is to sample many times throughout the field in a sort of crisscross zigzag going across, so that you get a small sample from different parts of your field, and you mix this all together very well indeed, so that again a small subsample goes into the analytical machinery. So just to summarize and to draw some conclusions, organic matter does three things in soil. It stabilizes soil, it binds the particles together. Remember that aggregate that dropped in the water at the beginning. It provides fertility and nutrients, of course it does. It's rich in nitrogen, and as you well know. But I think something that doesn't get quite as well emphasized as it could is it acts as an energy source for organisms that live in soil. And they want to arrange their habitat for their own benefit, and in doing so, they arrange it in a suitable way for your crops to grow, to find nutrients and find water. A little organic matter we found seems to have a surprisingly large effect, and it has that effect reasonably quickly, within a few years. And as I say, as well as increasing yields willy-nilly, organic matter helps confer resilience in those yields, that you tend to maintain better yields over a number of years. And we're reporting soon on some of the work we've been doing on the nature of organic matter that you can add to soil, how it affects yields, and we hope to be able to make some recommendations that will help you in the near term. Thank you very much. You're saying thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. That was great. We've got time for two quick questions to Andy, if anybody's got anything that's pertinent. Any questions? Peter Gadd. Not Peter Gadd. Could you say your name, please, and where you're from? Thank you.
The question was about straw incorporation. So one of the amendments which we've been trying in the series of experiments we've got here is straw. What we found, of course, is that straw doesn't contain as much nitrogen as the rest, so there's a bit of a competition between the straw that's added and the crop for the nitrogen. But if you factor that out, perhaps a little extra nitrogen is needed in order to help break down that straw, you do get additional yield. But you have to be careful that you're not that there's enough nitrogen in the system to be able to incorporate the carbon which is into the straw satisfactorily within the organic matter. But happy to talk to you more about that later.
Go ahead, Peter.
Andy, could you give me some idea perhaps of the relative values of different FYM? I'm thinking perhaps farmyard manure versus biosolids in terms of output. Have you done any work on that?
Well, if by biosolids you mean what comes out of the sewage plants, I'm afraid that was not one of the things we looked at. We looked at anaerobic digestate, compost, farmyard manure and straw mainly, although we have got some other side work going on with biosolids, which certainly are useful. They contain organic matter, they're very valuable. The farmyard manure we found was one of the best things that you could apply. It's probably no surprise really. It's the kind of stuff that went onto the land originally when it wasn't being farmed. Wild animals would be putting that kind of thing on there. So you might well expect the fact that the biosolids would do something similar, but I haven't got chapter and verse on that, I'm afraid.